everyone, welcome to another video, and this is gonna be different than probably any other video on my channel. And I'm just gonna kick it right off here. I am going to review the very first two episodes of the 2023 Frasier reboot slash revival slash continuation slash whatever you want to call it. So before I jump into what I think of this new iteration of Frasier, this new continuation of Frasier, I should probably give you my thoughts. And I don't think I've ever done a video about this on the channel. I've mentioned it in many a live stream. I've talked about it on podcast 572 if you listen to that. I am a diehard Frasier fan, a Frasier-holic, whatever you want to call it. This is my favorite sitcom of all time, is one of my favorite television shows of all time. I grew up watching Frasier. I would watch Frasier weekly with my mom. I love this show to death. I have sat through and rewatched Frasier over the years, probably about 10 times. I try to watch it annually because I get to that point, right, where there's a lot of modern TV that's garbage, and I like to remind myself of when television was great, especially sitcoms, because 2023, it's really hard to make shit funny. I never say Frasier was, relatively an offensive show or anything like that, but it is hard to make a comedy in 2023. And me being a diehard Frasier fan, I was of two minds of this when this was announced and they started showing more. You start learning more. You find out, David Hyde Pierce is not going to come back as Niles. There will be cameos from some of the people, like Frasier's ex-wife. Daphne is supposed to have an appearance at some point. Roz is supposed to have an appearance at some point. Obviously, the late John Mahoney won't be in this because he passed in 2018, which is very hard. And they definitely address that in the first episode. And I think they will sprinkle things about him in the background throughout the show, which is fine. But I love the original Frasier. I think it is the perfect sitcom. I don't think there's a bad episode of that original show. It's a show where I don't even have to watch it in order. I can literally at night, sometimes I will flip on Peacock. It has the ability to watch channels. I'll turn on the Hallmark channel because they'll run reruns of Frasier. It doesn't matter. I love Frasier. I guess walking into this, my best hope and expectation was that this was going to be the 2018 revival of Roseanne, another show that I love dearly, although to me it's not a perfect show. That final season, the 9th season, is utter garbage because none of it really actually happened. But that is a show that I also rewatch on occasion and have seen multiple times. And I will say, for better or for worse, the 2018 revival of Roseanne, when it was with Roseanne before she said what she said and got ousted from that show, and rightfully so. She said some very nasty shit and she needed to go. That reboot was fantastic. I loved every episode of it. And then they flipped over to the Connors, which I've enjoyed the Connors for what it is, but it did have a dip in quality for a little bit. I feel it's back to where it should be. And it ended in such a way that if the writer's strike did take it and we don't get a 6th season, I'm okay with it. So I say all that to prepare you for my thoughts on Frasier, because going into it, best case scenario for me, at least these first two episodes. And again, this is just the first two episodes. We have not seen the entire season of this show, but the first two episodes are available now on Paramount Plus. And I went in hoping, boy, I hope it can at least be like that. And I'll be honest, I was blown away at how much I actually liked it. It starts off a little rough because you have to get used to these new characters. You have to remember he's going back to Boston. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of callbacks. I mean, they start right away with references to his dad. The way they've written it is that his dad just passed. So there was a funeral, but his son didn't show up to the funeral. So he's out in Boston to visit his son, find out why he didn't show up for the funeral. And that kind of, leads into Frasier's going to stay here. They do some quick writing and quick callbacks to what's happened in 20 years since the show hasn't been on in 20 years. So they do, touch on things like, hey, what happened with his career? Did he stay in Chicago? All those things, which I don't want to spoil all that here because I do think it's very well written. And they do some incredible callbacks, especially in the first episode. Very emotional, like at the end. With him, interaction with him and his son, talking about the character of Martin Crane, talking about, that character as a whole. And it's not just like a scene that's a father and a son mourning their grandpa and their father respectively. It's also a chance for the audience to mourn that person who's not going to be a part of this reboot because they passed, which again, the original character of Martin Crane, that actor John Mahoney, a legendary actor and just such an incredible performance that really added something to that show. You have to remember Frasier is a character that was spun off of Cheers, which I've seen Cheers through a couple times as well. I do like Cheers, but I love Frasier. I have a like relationship with Cheers and I have a love relationship when it comes to Frasier. So, but you have to remember that's how it spun out. And so they had to bring all these characters in and build something. And they're doing the same thing here, with the character of his son, the character of his roommate and the situation there, which again, I don't want to spoil because it's written so well. And the way they play it off in the first episode, I was like, oh, they're going to do the typical 2023 thing. And they don't do that. They kind of subverted my expectations and they go in a direction. I would say it's like a hint of a little bit of darkness, but it makes sense for the character of Frasier and for this story. And I think in many ways it's going to make it better. And I was pleasantly surprised. I do like to call back that the first episode is called The Good Father, which is a callback to the original pilot for Frasier, which, was called The Good Son. And this whole show is going to be the parallel, right? Like the original show was him living with his dad, hanging out with his brother, and learning to live with his father. And they live together in that apartment. And now we're seeing the dynamic switched where he is the father figure and Freddie is the younger, person. And it works incredibly well. I love the actor that's playing Freddie. I like the idea of how I wrote him here. Like they had a really easy, like they could have went the route and made him who his parents wanted him to be. We saw this character kind of grow up a little bit on Frasier. I want to say when that show ended, he was like between the ages of 12 and 14. So you never really know where you didn't know at that time where he was going to go. Right. And here he's a firefighter. He went to Harvard and decided that wasn't for him. He wanted to go and kind of follow in his grandpa's footsteps. But instead of being a cop, he's become a firefighter, which is very noble and honorable. And, Frasier, the character of Frasier, struggles with that because he feels that his son should have, finished going to Harvard and done something completely different. And so that dynamic plays off very well because Freddie's very much like the grandpa, Martin. He's very down to earth person and Frasier is very eccentric and the whole show of Frasier, he was an eccentric snob, right? Like that was what made him a lovable character, was that, him being eccentric. And that's still on display. I'll say Kelsey Grammer kills both episodes of this. Like he turns it on like that. That very first scene where they mention, when they talk about how they just had the funeral for her father, like you can literally see tears in his eyes. Like, that's fucking real. I loved every minute of it. Is it perfect? No, it's not quite. It's the first two episodes, man. We have to get there. But from what's been done so far, I'm really enjoying my time with it. I'm shocked because I saw some of those early reviews come out. I saw some people are kind of negative on it down, saying, oh, this really isn't what I wanted out of it. And so I went into it with like very tempered expectations, and I'm happy to come out of the other end of it as a fan of Frasier and say this is actually very good. So for now, you know, one other thing I'll say, and then I'll kind of give what I think of the show right now a grade. I will return to this once all 10 episodes have aired, and I'll do probably a YouTube short and give a score to the whole season. But the other thing I want to point out is the actor and the character of David, which is the son of Niles and Daphne, is played to perfection. Like, just awesome. Loved every bit of that character. He has just all the mannerisms of Niles. It's fantastic. So for me right now, it's an 8 out of 10. I've really enjoyed my time with it so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. And I hope that it continues to hit as these first 2 episodes did. I'd love to know if you're a Frasier fan. Obviously, post in the comments. What did you think of it? Otherwise, stick around, and I will have more actual Horror Fest content, because this isn't really Horror Fest related, coming out this month. Until next time.